The second meditation that we're going to look at is meditation 2 from the book. And it's helping you to deal with negative emotions. What are negative emotions? I mean, when we get angry and we feel out of sorts, and then later we regret it, or maybe we don't. That's an even worse problem. So as we deal with the negative emotions, what happens when you look at your mind? What happens is it triggers a whole series of thoughts. The anger itself, to use the anger example, anger triggers a whole series of emotions, but it's also a whole series of thoughts that trigger the anger. You start having thoughts about people, about a situation, about the way that things are working out, and anger starts to build up. And as anger starts to build up, the body goes into angry mode. Enzymes and hormones are secreted, and we get so angry sometimes that we could spit or we could throw things, and some people actually do. If we can stop the thoughts from triggering the anger, then we can stop the anger. A lot of people say at this point, when I'm talking to them about this, they say, oh, well, that's part of my nature. Well, your nature can be changed, and that's really the big takeaway from this particular meditation. So what I want you to do is I want you to grab a journal and start a meditation journal and start writing down, if you're dealing with anger, let's say, or you're dealing with other emotions, write down the times that you got angry. Is it a weekly event? Is it a monthly event? Is it an annual event? What triggers it? Is it Christmas that triggers it? Is it visiting your family? Is it certain individuals? Is it certain situations? What is the trigger? Because if we can begin to understand the trigger, then we can begin to understand why we do that, why we get angry. So the biggest step in doing this is a step that I call the self-diagnosis step. We take our journal and we simply start to write down when it happens, how we felt, what the situation was, who the people were that were involved. And as that information gathers, we start to develop a database on our anger. And the database on anger can then be used to begin a meditation process that's going to help. So we need to continue what we were doing in part 1, which is focusing on mindfulness, being mindful of the breath. And in the process of being mindful of the breath, being aware of what is triggering our thoughts. If we can get that far, then we can start to look at why the thought was triggered. And as we then look at that, we can look at not only why was it triggered, how was it triggered, and can we begin to look at other ways of dealing with that trigger. So for example, right now, my dog is outside and he wants to get in. I've got two things. I can ignore him and go on, or I can deal with the situation and let the dog in. Or I can get frustrated that the dog wants to come in the middle of a recording. So what am I going to do? Firstly, I'm not going to get frustrated in the middle of a recording. So I'm just going to turn the recording off, let the dog in, deal with the situation, and then go on. And that's how we have to deal with things. The thought dog wants to come in isn't the problem. What the thought is that creates that problem is, I'm frustrated because the dog always wants to do this. Well, it's a dog. And sometimes we just need to put things into perspective to help us get over the anger. But we can't do that if we're not aware of it. So when I come back from letting the dog in, we're going to talk about the next step. So we start the meditation process. And we start focusing on the breath after we've relaxed our body. And we sit in a comfortable position where our back is like a stack of coins, with our skull, the ball on top of those coins. And we focus on our breathing. Breathing in, I relax. Breathing out, I relax. And we do this for about 20 minutes, focusing on calming, focusing on the breath. If no thoughts arise, that's great. If a lot of thoughts start arising, one of the tricks that you can use is you can open your eyes just a little. Not wide like that. You open your eyes wide, you start to get distracted by stuff that's going on around you. So we just open the eyes just a little. So I can see out of that crack in my eyes, and I'm looking down in front of me to a spot on the floor, a few feet in front of me. And if the thoughts stop, and I feel comfortable with it, I might close my eyes again. Now, at this point in our meditation learning experience, you may only want to meditate for about 3 minutes and then stop and get your journal and write a few notes about what happened. If you're fortunate, nothing happened, then nothing happened. If thoughts came, and write down what those thoughts are. But the next step, beyond documenting that and calming the mind and focusing on the breath, by focusing on the breath, when thoughts rise, just don't let them bother you, just go back to the breath. It sounds very simple, but it can take a little bit of practice to do that. We're developing a new habit. Okay, so we've made some notes. One of the tricks, again, that you can use is to label the thoughts. Were they thoughts about Logan, my dog? Were they thoughts about going shopping this afternoon? What is that list of shopping things that I wanted? Where did I put that? Are they thoughts about what happened at that business meeting I was at last week? Are they thoughts about a neighbor of mine? Is it thoughts about a family member. So start to tag these and start to make a list in your journal about the labels. You see, what we're doing here is we're creating a new level of thinking about the thoughts. Instead of getting caught up in the minutiae of what the thought actually was, we're now getting caught up in the next level of minutiae, which is what was the type of thought that you were having. Because that can help us as we go on in this process. It can help us to begin to understand what are the things that are triggering thought cascades or thought trains, call them what you will. Okay, go back to the breath. So you've done your 3 minutes, you've written in your journal, you go back to the breath. Just keep returning to the breath.